Welcome, everyone. I hope to hear that everyone's down with OPP because that's who we are. So you're listening, so you must be down with OPP, the Offensive Points Podcast. That is, of course. Little shout out to some old 90s rap. But anyway, just want to go ahead and say I'm not Joe Wiggins because my voice is not like his. I'm Josh Hall, and this is my buddy Billy. And we're going to tell you not about week previews because at this point, like, you pretty much know who to start. If not, there's plenty of content on this channel to help you out with that. So we are switching gears and getting back into what I like to deem the fun stuff. This week we're going to be talking about some, kind of league winners and some trades you can make to at the trade deadline for redraft and also into dynasty leagues. Some guys who have some upside who maybe aren't, Tyreek Hills and all right, honestly, Tyreek Hill could be traded for at this point, but they're not the CD Lambs and everyone out there. So you're not getting everybody's first round pick, but there are some players out there that are valuable and could help you win your league this year. So let's, without further ado, let's, get us some football.
For sure. Yeah, as me and Joe mentioned towards the end of last week's podcast, if nobody made it through the entire episode, we did mention that, last week at game previews. It's week 10. You all know what to do or what not to do or week 11, I think. Just kidding. Said that wrong. We know what to do and what not to do. So we're going to get into more of the fun stuff. Like Josh said, we're going to do the league winners for this season. This is going to be redraft / dynasty. So if your trade deadline is already passed, this may be just dynasty information at that point. But if you are in a league that the trade deadline hasn't passed, these are players that you can go after and end up getting for potential championship run. So before we get into that, Josh, I do want to talk about a little bit of news-ish type stuff
Okay.
that we can break into real quick. The first thing I wanted to hit on was that Anthony Richardson is back. After Shane Steichen said that they would not be switching quarterbacks again, not 2 weeks ago, they have now decided to switch quarterbacks. So what was your initial reaction to that? And then, why do you think they made this decision?
So honestly, I guess my first initial reaction was I didn't realize the Colts had been losing. So I was kind of like, oh, why are they switching? And then I kind of looked at the schedule and I was like, they dropped a couple in a row. Makes sense. You got this, what's supposed to be your star quarterback out there not playing, and Joe Flacco's not winning games either. So might as well turn it back over, see what you got. This season is not out of reach for them. I mean, 4-6 is not out. They're 2 games back in the division. They're like 1 game, 2 games back in the wild card. A lot can happen in the last 7-8 weeks of football. So I don't dislike it. I mean, maybe this is what Richardson needed. We see this all the time with quarterbacks getting benched for a little bit and coming back out. Did we not just see this recently? Escaping me right now that someone
Technically Bryce Young.
Yeah. I mean, he's doing decently. I mean, you're seeing him actually go out there and play football. He
wasn't the reason they won that game against the Giants, but yeah, I mean, he did win that game.
No, that was Tracy. Yeah, so I mean, it's nice to see young guys out there that are struggling sit behind people, which is I've been a component for this for a long time. We need to be sitting rookies who are not ready to start anyway. But hopefully he learned a lesson, and hopefully he goes out there and tries to show what he learned.
Yeah, I agree. I thought they should have gone back to him after last week. I thought that the performance that the Colts put out there would not have been any worse had Anthony Richardson been out there. And I feel like when you get to that point, then you just go with the guy that is actually going to be on your team for the long run, which, I mean, may not happen still, but I think you can safely say that this team will be better with Anthony. Well, I think it's going to be about the same, honestly. And just they thought Joe Flacco was going to come in and do a Browns-like run with them, but they just don't have the same team that's built to do something like that. Whereas,
you'd think, I mean, other than the defense isn't as great, obviously, but you'd think this offense is better than the Browns last year. So, you'd think that this would be a team that could do it. But, Flacco, 4 interceptions in 2 games, not a good look. Bring it back to Richardson.
Been hurt, too. So, you
That's
can't
true.
even, the fact that they're making this evaluation now, when Pittman has been said that this is the healthiest he's felt in the last couple of weeks. It's so now you're making the switch now that Pittman's back healthy when Flacco might have been better with the wide receiver 1 out on the field. I don't know. It's just kind of oddly run. I don't really know what's going on. I have a feeling there's an ownership issue here where he's kind of just giving Jim Irsay is kind of just giving them what they're going to do, and then just they have to live with it. But this has just been really oddly managed so far.
Spoiler alert, I actually have a Colt on my league winner, so we'll get into this a little bit further just here in a little bit. How about that? But I wanted to bring up something that's not news related, but is what's happening. And I know I said we're not going to do any game previews, and we're not. I just want to say that I am stoked for this Thursday night football game, and I think everyone should be. Even if it's not the shootout that everyone thinks it's going to be, the Eagles Commanders basically taking the lead actually either one who wins is taking the lead in the division and might not ever give it back. So both teams have pretty easy schedules down the run, 1 or 2 hard games or so with each other and a couple other teams. But looking forward to seeing who wins this matchup now that the Cowboys are pretty much officially out and the Giants have been for some time. So it's going to be a really good game. Looking forward to it all. Just saying, I have so many fantasy players on both teams, so this should be really fun for me, hopefully, or maybe not.
Okay, well, I'll give you my take. I think game is not going to be close. I think the Eagles are going to blow them out. We've been talked about this a little bit with Joe last week during the game preview of the Commanders, and like, what do you know? It ends up happening almost the exact same way again. Like the Commanders, they are really good on offense. However, there is a piece missing from their offense. They kick too many field goals. A lot of sevens end up being threes. Whereas, like, I know that they scored touchdowns last week. I'm not not going to go back over and.
To be fair, one of them was freebie from the Pittsburgh Steelers, or I should say, the special teams guy who just dropped the 4th and 15.
That's true.
Fake punt, but
that's true. I just there's a reason that the Washington kicker Austin Seibert is like the number 1 kicker. Like, there's a reason for that. Like, they're kicking a lot of freaking field goals, and that scares me. And I think in a game like this against the Eagles, I don't think you can afford to do that. They're gonna have to score sevens because this isn't Pittsburgh. You could pull something like that out because I think those are a little bit more evenly matched teams. But I think this Eagles team is a little bit farther along than the Commanders, so I don't know if this is going to be necessarily a close game, even though I want it to be. I want it to be like an instant classic, but I just don't think the Commanders are going to be able to do it.
Number one, the Eagles can shoot themselves in the foot. They can. Their defense has been stellar all year.
That's the only way they win. Just shooting themselves in the foot.
But at the same time, you got to look at this as this is a new organization with a brand new rookie quarterback, with a brand new, just pretty much all around new team, other than a couple stars that have stayed in place. So they have a lot to prove, and they don't do the whole 4th and 2 stuff. And honestly, Nick Sirianni could shoot this game in the foot by going for it on 4th and 3 when they're in field goal range. And Seibert, or I guess he's actually out, the backup will end up, Zane Gonzalez will just kick field goal instead. And that could be the end of the game and the win. So I hope that Nick Sirianni is smarter than that. I'm really tired of not going for it on 4th and 3 and it not working. So.
Yeah, I don't know. I want this to be a classic game, but it's just hard for me to see that because
I can see it being a scrummy game. You know what I mean? Just kind of 21-17 ending, not what everyone's thinking it to be. I'm sure the over-under is probably 50 just because of both the teams' offenses, but the Eagles have actually let up the 4th least amount of points in the NFL right now. And yes, they had a bye, but a lot of teams have at this point. So it's still pretty amazing to see, but I don't know. I'm interested to see how it goes because Jaden Daniel can get out of sacks, but he can also step the wrong way and walk right into Zach Bond. So,
yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think that the Commanders are outperforming what they're able to do, and I do think that will fix itself sooner rather than later. But I've seen a lot of praise on Cliff Kingsbury, whereas they should be scoring a lot more points than they are based on how many opportunities they have when they get on the opponent's other side of the field. They're just settling for threes and not against the Giants. You remember that game they won by kicking 6 field goals, and it's is that how you want to win these games? I don't know. I just
ironically enough, the NFC East actually has one of the easier schedules. I think it was supposed to be harder because we all play the NFC South. And then there's I think it's the AFC North, the Ravens. I think everyone plays the Ravens, maybe not the Giants or something. So the Eagles have the Giants and the Rams, I think are probably 2 of the toughest opponents outside the 2 Commanders games. So we've both had really easy schedules. The Saints, I think everyone expected the Saints, Cardinals, Falcons to be a little bit more of a, tough division, but or sorry, not Cardinals, but just these divisions in general. So it's gonna be interesting. I'm looking forward to it.
For sure. Yeah, it'll be a fun game. Okay. Well, we are 10 minutes into this podcast and we have not talked about what we're here to do, Josh. So let's just hop right into it. My last news story we're going to talk about a little bit within our video here. So, first thing on, you want to kick us off? Who is your
I
first
do.
league winner for this 2024 season?
I do. And so that is our man, Josh Jacobs. So big fan of this guy going into the season. And I think he actually is available for trade right now. Earlier in the year, Jacobs was pretty much untouchable in trades, at least for me. I know I tried several times. And now I think for most people, Billy, he hasn't really lived up to the expectations. He's currently running back 19 on the year in PPR. Although he has come along the past few weeks, he is currently coming off the bye. And so I think the recency bias right now, if you sent a trade out for Josh Jacobs right now, what has he done for me lately? He had 12 the week before, coming off a bye. So it's been 2 weeks since then. And yeah, there were a couple 20-point performances in there. But I think with the weather cooling down, they have some home games against San Francisco, Miami, 2 games that they're going to have to run the ball in. And we're going to maybe get some snow games coming up too. And I don't know if you remember the Miami KC game from last year, but that team doesn't thaw very well. So that should be just a game where Josh Jacobs is running loose. And then they also host New Orleans in most of fantasy championship games. And that's a really plus matchup for Josh Jacobs. And in between all that, they have 2 tough divisional matchups, which they're going to have to establish the run as well. So these winter games for Green Bay, always in the past, have featured a heavy dose of running backs. I just think Jacobs is heating up right before, and there's really no clear number 2, even though Billy really tried to keep speaking it into existence. There's no number 2 here. So the sky's the limit.
Let me stop you right there, Mr. Josh Hall. There seems to be somebody who just had their window to practice open.
Oh my God, are we doing this again?
Marshawn Lloyd. He will officially be back. He is practicing today. And so we will see. I do think this is a good time. If you have somebody who's really tapped in, this is actually the best time to jump on a Josh Jacobs potential owner, because the Marshawn Lloyd news can be a little bit overbearing. And when they put that in the little ESPN blurb that, like, hey, Marshawn Lloyd is activated, this is actually a good time to jump on the Jacobs news or Jacobs situation, because that person might be scared off about that. And I don't think they're going to fully hand the keys over to Marshawn Lloyd. But I do think that this is an opportunity, if you have somebody who's plugged in, to take advantage of that potentially. Because, yeah, you're right. He hasn't lived up necessarily to it, but we're getting to the crunch time of games, and we might actually, they've already had their bye, and this will be a perfect time for them to get back in. But, yeah, the Marshawn Lloyd news is a tad bit scary for some people.
Yeah, I just that Chicago, Detroit, Seattle. I think Seattle's actually one of the easiest against the run right now. That's the wild card round. And then you got the Saints there. And then, yeah, sure, 17th if you do go into week 17. That's a tough matchup against Minnesota, but you have to imagine at Minnesota, once again, another winter game, potential. Well, never mind, they got a dome. Never mind. So that's different. But yeah, I love everything about it. I think this is doable right now. I'm kind of just spitballing, but like I think a DeAndre Swift could get this trade done, or something of that nature. Swift, even though on that team right now, is actually currently doing great work. So that is the Chicago Bears, which we will actually talk about the Chicago Bears. It's going to be a little lighter. We're not. I'll be honest with you. Neither one of us picked the Chicago Bears players for league winners at the moment.
Yeah,
Joe did, but he's not here.
We'll get to the Joe people at the end. All right, I'd like to start with my first one, and that is Mr. Jameson Williams from the Detroit Lions. Look, I don't think I need to convince you all out there that having a piece of this Detroit Lions offense is almost as good as gold. But you're not going to get Amon-Ra. You're not going to get David Montgomery. You're not going to get Jahmyr Gibbs. You probably could get Sam Laporta. I don't want to hide you there, but I don't think you want him. You don't want to be the one.
I'm not gonna lie. He's actually doing pretty decently lately, so it's probably a little harder to get Laporta at this moment.
It's not what you wanted Sam Laporta to do, though, when you drafted him.
No, definitely not.
Like a silly goose that did that out there.
We tell everybody these things, though, is the thing, and they don't listen to us. So
it's true. So Jameson Williams, he did the 2-week suspension. He came back last week. He had a modest game. I wouldn't say it was mind blowing, but it was good enough to put some points on the board. But I think now is the time that we need to buy in on Jameson Williams. I think down the stretch here, look, any week he could pop out and have a top 5 wide receiver week. It really only takes one catch a game. And I think as we go down the stretch here, Lions are going to be fighting for that 1 seed. Dan Campbell is not in the business of resting players either, so not necessarily going to see anybody sitting on the bench either. And I think a guy like Jameson Williams can eat all of the leftovers from all the other players on the team. I don't think Laporta or any of these other guys are going to be taking any of his snaps. And I think that his target share should go slightly up rolling into the playoffs. So this team is cooking on all cylinders. I think Jameson Williams could win you a league this season.
Honestly, I completely agree. 2 misses in 7 games for a guy who has caught like 6 balls going into the season. I mean, I'll take the 10 as a minimum from him. And then, you got two duds, which, yeah, he's an explosive player. Sometimes the Lions, honestly, sometimes Montgomery doesn't have a good game. Sometimes Amon-Ra hasn't had a good game. So, aka the last game. The good thing about this is all their tough matchups, which, you'd be like, oh, plus matchups or whatever. That doesn't count for Jameson Williams, right? Like you don't have a bad matchup for Jameson Williams. He can beat anybody. But they got Buffalo week 15. They got Chicago week 16. Yeah, that's a blow off game, but still could be fun. And and then San Francisco week 17 if you're in it. Like, I mean, they're fighting for all these games. Like they still got to make sure that they get that number 1 seed. Now week 18, I don't know what Minnesota does and what Detroit does by then, but if Detroit falls a couple games and Minnesota keeps winning, I mean, they're 1 game up like right now. So
if you're playing in week 18, you need to tell your league commissioner that we need to switch that.
Yeah, I mean that should be an absolute no-brainer to not have that going. But
we shouldn't be doing any week 18.
So what would you?
Grown-ups.
I don't know if you did this. I just kind of did this, but did you have any like mock-ups for what you would trade for JMO?
I did not, but I mean, you could totally trade him. I mean, I think you could trade away a middling player and get him back, which I think his upside is better than whatever that middling player.
I honestly think you could almost add Jameson onto a trade, like. Because nobody's starting. Not a lot of people in redraft are starting Jameson Williams, right? Like, I mean, I haven't been. I have him on. I've had him sitting on my bench the entire year behind Metcalf and Devontae Adams, and also got McLaurin. Like, so, like, I'm like, yeah, I would love to use JMO, but like, I'm not going to start him over those 3. But I'd be the perfect person to target for Jameson in that league. Like,
well, I would like for an example. I think like Romeo Dubs. I think he's a guy you could probably give up right now. I think somebody would be rather willing to have Romeo Dubs than Jameson Williams, but I do think we're talking similar value
there. Yeah. Keenan Allen, never mind. Let's not talk about that. That's gross. All right. Well, I did not do this intentionally, but my second guy is actually another Josh, and that is Mr. Josh Downs. And so this is kind of where I wanted to bring up the whole Richardson situation, because I think this is actually really curious. So I personally love targeting players who are just going to be vying for a playoff spot, right? Like it's great to trade for a Lions player. They're always winning. I think the good news is they're going to be in at least a tight knit ending race for that week 1 or that number 1 seed. But Josh Downs is going to be playing this entire time. And the Colts really just aren't out of the mix even close. So sample size of connection of Richardson and Downs is super small, which is precisely why I think buying in on Downs at a discounted price is perfect. So switch back to Richardson. Obviously, as we talked about, it's weird. We don't know what's going to happen here. I think the one game they played together was week 8, and they got that 109-yard game touchdown. So the thing about Richardson is he loves to throw the deep ball. Downs has been consistent as hell these last few games with a combination of Richardson and Flacco. 9, 9, 10. I don't see that number changing. Richardson wants to have this job. He wants to keep this job, so he's going to surely pepper his number 1 with plenty of targets. Yes, we're getting Pittman back. I think that's just another reason you can buy Josh Downs, and I don't think you're not selling your wide receiver 1, your wide receiver 2, or hopefully not even your wide receiver 3 for this, right? Like you're selling your wide receiver 4, like your Jameson Williams that's sitting on your bench that you're not using. Personally, I had like Ridley or Shakir as a few ideas to throw out for Downs, just because team with Titans, just get out of there, get out while you can. I feel like that's been my MO with Ridley all year. And then Shakir is like, yeah, I love it, but like, is it going to be consistent enough, right? Like Downs, I feel like as your 4th guy, more than likely if you have Shakir, he's not your number 2. So just trying to think of some of those guys that are like wide receiver 3s, and I just feel like he's going to get plenty of targets.
You could even go a guy like Tank Dell. I think I'd rather have Josh Downs than Tank Dell as soon as Nico comes back. I think I'd rather have that. Even considering maybe like T. Higgins, like maybe you pass your
Yeah,
headache off
just
because you
get rid
want
of
someone
that.
else.
He's coming back
Exactly,
this week,
because
they say.
well, I mean, I think on face value alone, somebody would be like, "Oh shit, I'm getting T. Higgins out of this." Okay, and they would be apt to doing that, but you never know when T. Higgins is going to come back. And on the same vein, maybe Jalen Waddle, just pass that
Yeah.
headache off because Waddle has all the opportunity in the world, especially with Tua back, to pop for the rest of the season. Josh Downs has been a little bit more quarterback proof than Waddle has, and I think you might be able to get more points out of that. But those are just a couple of guys.
Yeah, and this is like I said, this is a wait and see, right? Let's see what Richardson has, but get him on your team before he goes off for 2 touchdowns next week. Like I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if it does, you're never going to get him. Well, not to mention trade deadlines are coming up, so I don't know. I had this weird thing about Josh Downs. I never was a fan of this. I was a Pittman guy through and through, but after this year, I've seen the way he's been playing, and he's not only the guy who's getting the most targets, but he's also one of those guys who's getting those deep shots, and Richardson likes to take them. So
That's fair. Okay. My second guy is Chuba Hubbard. And I know what you're telling yourself out there. You're like, holy shit, this guy's really good. Like, what? How was he trade for a bowl? Well, Jonathan Brooks is back. And I think up until they gave Chuba Hubbard that extension, we all just assumed maybe they were just going to give the hand the keys over. Kind of like when CMC got back, suddenly Jordan Mason, who is that? Is he even going to be able to get in the building on Monday? This is not that situation. I think Chuba Hubbard is actually still going to be the RB1 here going forward, and Jonathan Brooks is just a smokescreen. However, your league mate might not know that, or might not understand that, or might not be thinking that. So you might be able to swipe Chuba Hubbard right out from under them. Right now, Chuba Hubbard is being ranked somewhere in the same vein as David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, J.K. Dobbins, Ramondre Stevenson. I think I would much rather have Chuba Hubbard than any of those guys, but that's who he's getting ranked around. And I think right
which
now
is
could be the
hilarious
time.
because he's RB6 on the year.
Right, but you wouldn't even know that. Like, I'm looking at a list right now. Chase Brown is ranked ahead of him as far as trade candidates for the rest of the season. You're telling me you'd rather have Chase Brown than Chuba Hubbard? Not me. Sorry. I know Brooks is coming back. Not me. I'd rather have Chuba Hubbard at this point in time.
I mean, they're not going to roll out Jonathan Brooks for a full workload his week 1 that he comes out,
I don't
right?
need
So
the rest of
Chuba's,
the season. Gotta be honest with you, Josh. Why would you? Why would you risk him injuring himself this season? There's no reason. You might as well roll Chuba Hubbard out there.
I
You've
mean, you
got
waited
Hubbard
till
locked
week
up.
12.
So, exactly, in a losing effort. So, I actually think this is the perfect time to snatch up Hubbard. I doubt it. Worst case, this is a 50-50 split, or like not a 50-50 split, but like a 60-40 split, which I still think leads Hubbard this season. This season. Maybe in Dynasty, we hold off on making a move like this, but they still locked him up for 5 years. So, you still could take that going forward. So, I don't know. I think
I
Chuba
don't
Hubbard's the kind of guy you want to go after right now because I think the news is scaring the person that has him, thinking, I think the train ride is over, which it's not.
Yeah, and we've seen this many times where there's that fill-in running back, and like you said, Mason's the most recent example. But there's been several times where we're like, "Oh my gosh, this guy's amazing. He's matchup proof. He's fine. He can do it with another guy. He's been running with Damian Pierce this whole time too." And then like all of a sudden, Mixon comes in and takes the job. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's not a great example, but I want to hate this, right? Like I think this is so dumb. Like Chuba Hubbard, you're trading for a team that's going to probably end up being second or third dead last. I don't know, one of those. But honestly, though, like they're playing the same this week as they are next week, and they're playing the same week 16 as they are week 17 and this week because they're 3 wins, 4 wins.
Well, and there's like such beautiful, juicy garbage time potential with Chuba Hubbard, whereas like the
He's been
game may
getting
be
it.
out of reach, but like he may still get a touchdown out of the deal just because they're down, 35-10, and he falls into the end zone at the end of the game. That's still all in potential here. So I don't know. Chuba Hubbard is the kind of guy I want on my team because the Panthers they're not going to rest Hubbard for the rest of the season. They're going to rest Brooks. So Hubbard, I think, will be getting all these touches no matter what.
Well, and also, I don't know what his injury ended up being, but Miles Sanders went down hard, and that was he got carted off in Germany. So there's he's not coming back for a little while either, which still understand why they didn't trade him, but whatever.
Aren't well run, to say the least.
Yeah. So my next is kind of like a two-parter because I think that this is one of those situations where you can trade for both in different situations. So we got the guys, the Cardinals running backs, man. So now for more of kind of a shot in the dark for Trey Benson, but kind of finally getting a decent share of the workload. I know some of it's kind of in trash time, but 2 weeks in a row of 10 plus touches. I'm loving this Trey Benson finally getting some workload. I think he's kind of a modifier in a trade, right? Like you're not throwing too much talent away. He's owned in like 11% of leagues, so you could probably just pick him up, honestly. But I don't think you can wait anymore after this buy. Like I think he's going to be a hot commodity. I know that James Conner is also still a trade target. This is one of my guys. I'm just kind of getting to Benson for first, but they're actually playing Carolina in the most people's championships at least. So I don't know if you've watched Carolina or listened to the last thing we said, but they're pretty bad. So it should be a game where Benson gets an even heftier portion. So it's just one of those guys who you can ride the bench. If you want to wait till week 16 to do this, I'm cool with that too. I just something about Benson. But back to Connor, one of the most boring running backs. Like I don't know if it's the name, I don't know what it is. Everyone just kind of doesn't like James Conner. I tried to trade James Conner all year. Nobody wanted him. So yes, there's a couple duds out there, but there's a reason he's running back 9 on the year. He just keeps finding he's active in the passing game. He finds the end zone. He is one of the guys who really makes the Cardinals win football games. So um, he might be boring to watch, but I don't know. I'm not worried about that workload cut yet. Let's see how it plays out. I think you can also play into that for your trade if you wanted to try to do this. I'd say like a Tony Pollard, Rashad White kind of person for Connor. And I mean, obviously maybe something else, but just something, you're dumping a fun running back for another, boring running back for another boring running back. And I know people look at, oh, he's running back 9. He's got the most points or, the 12th amount of points. So technically he's really good. People just don't like James Conner. He's 30. I think in Dynasty is a good time to buy him too for the
I
cheap.
like how you're saying people, by the way, when you are definitely one of those people, or used to be at least.
I've drafted him. I've drafted him the last 2 years. I actually am one of those people. I find him extremely boring, but yet I still have him on my team because I know he gets work.
I'm
20
glad that
carries a
you feel
game,
that.
pretty much. Yeah, I mean it's hard to stop.
Well,
And
the thing that is good about the Cardinals right now is their offense is cooking, and we are still, I think, as a community, adverse to the Cardinals because the way Kyler Murray plays football doesn't really make sense. And so the fact that they're actually doing quite well right now, I think, is a reason that everybody thinks the floor is going to fall out eventually. But I don't think we're going to get there. I think Connor is just a workhorse. I think the wide receivers are a little bit like, you should panic a little bit
wishy
there. But
washy.
running back wise, you're fine. There's no problem there.
Yeah, I mean Marvin Harrison's starting to get a little bit more, but like still only like 7-5 targets a game. Like it's just like
Yeah.
give him 10 targets, man, just to see.
Well, this is just a run offense. Like, as much as we want to think like eventually this is going to change, they like Trey McBride and they like the running backs, and that's what we're going to do. And wide receivers be damned. We're not. It's not going to be that way, which sucks. At least for this year. I mean, in the future, it's probably going to be different. But for this year, it seems like it's a tight end and running back situation for just this one, I guess.
Yeah, Trey McBride's been solid as hell.
Yeah, no, definitely a guy that if you drafted him, you're probably watching this as a league winner. Like right now, you're probably thinking about it because Trey McBride was a good guy to get on your team. Okay, my last one before we get to our honorable mentions is going to be Wan'Dale Robinson. I think people have quietly forgotten what Wan'Dale Robinson has been doing this year because they aren't as flashy as they were the first 6 weeks, or first part of the season, but we're still cooking with gas when it comes to the targets. And there's rumors that Daniel Jones is going to get benched. That doesn't really worry me at all because Daniel Jones isn't good now, so it doesn't really matter if they put Drew Lock in or not. Like the plan is still to get it to Wan'Dale, or if you can't get it to Wan'Dale, get it to Malik Neighbors. Those are the two guys that you're throwing the ball to. I don't think that's going to cease. It's going to be the Tyrone Tracy show, and then passing game wise, Wan'Dale is just an extension of the running game as far as a passing guy. So I think you trade for Wan'Dale right now. His value is dirt cheap, and I think you trade a player. If it was me personally in this situation, you trade a player like Michael Pittman, and you go get Wan'Dale Robinson right now because Michael Pittman is going to be either a headache on your bench because of the injuries or because of his quarterback. One of those two things is going to be an issue for you with Michael Pittman. He is not Josh Downs, as we spoke earlier. Josh Downs has a better connection with Anthony Richardson than Michael Pittman does. And I think you want to give up Pittman right now to get a guy like Wan'Dale onto your team because you're going to be able to put him in your flex spot and not worry about it.
Also, could you imagine if Wan'Dale Robinson actually had just a little bit better of a quarterback? Like those targets with one catch each extra a game.
Yeah.
Like just inflated numbers completely.
No, I think in Dynasty, this I know we're gonna get to this in the offseason. I don't want to blow what I'm saying too much, but Wan'Dale is a guy you need to be fucking going after right now in Dynasty because when they get a quarterback who can cook in there, this guy's gonna be gold in PPR. I mean, just you're gonna be sitting on King Midas's silver or gold here. This guy is going to be worth it. But
not to take a little dynasty turn, we've already turned a little bit to dynasty. What does Hyatt bring? Jalen Hyatt coming in year 2. Obviously, they went Wan'Dale, Hyatt, Neighbors 3 years in a row. Hyatt's not going anywhere, right? Is this a wishy-washy thing? I know that Slayton's there now.
My problem is why is he not already out there? I don't.
Fair.
That's the part that I don't get because he should theoretically be in the Slayton role. I would think. I mean, he's not as tall as him, but you can't have Malik Neighbors. I think Malik Neighbors and Jalen Hyatt kind of play on the same side of the street. And Wan'Dale's your slot guy, so you're not going to give that up. And so you need a guy that's going to be on that outside where Slayton's been cooking. So I don't really know where Hyatt. I think he's a trade candidate from the Giants this offseason. I think to recoup some draft capital, try to rebuild his team. I think that's what they're going to have to do. And please, God, fantasy gods, don't send him to Cleveland. This seems like such a Cleveland move to trade for him just to be another guy on their wide receiver core.
Timeout. Actually, Slayton will be a free agent after this year.
Okay. Well, I mean, the thing is though, then why aren't we still having Hyatt out there? Why don't we see what we got?
I mean, honestly, so the weirdest part about the Giants is Daniel Jones is so terrible. I understand that they're losing games and they're playing till the bell basically because they're not worried about Daniel Jones getting injured. It's so wild to me.
But if he does get injured, there's a huge problem they have because they have to pay him $23 million. So they are kind of worried about him getting injured.
Well, that's their own fault for the contract. The contracts are ridiculous that they've signed here. But you got Slayton, who's on an expiring contract, who's doing pretty well too. I mean, you got Wan'Dale, who's getting 10+ targets a game on average, and you got Neighbors tearing it up out there whenever he's out on the field. So
should have traded Slayton is what really should have happened here.
They should have traded him at the deadline. That would have been really smart. Get that salary cap out.
They should have moved. I mean, he was kind of injured, I guess, but they should have moved him. I mean,
yeah, I honestly I want to see what Hyatt is. I know we're kind of on dynasty topic here, but Hyatt I think is a buy for me for dynasty right now. I want to see, and we can get into this more in the offseason, but I just started getting me thinking. I heard Hyatt's name. He caught 3 balls at the last drive to go tie the game. Why aren't we seeing more of that? It was pretty impressive because Neighbors was out there. Anyway.
I get what you're saying, but I think the Giants, other than Neighbors and Tracy, I think it's too expensive right now. But these two, I think Robinson and potentially Hyatt you could probably get for free. I mean, shit. But Robinson, you could, I'd say a second rounder could probably get him. You maybe have to pitch something else in. But I do think that's a very gettable name right now.
I think if you traded, let's say 2 teams are out of the playoffs, it's week 14. Guys got Hyatt, and you're like, hey man, you want to make a trade? And the guy's like, yeah, sure. What do you want? And you're like, Hyatt. And you're like, yeah, he didn't really do anything this year. You know what I mean? I just feel like there's not a hard sell. Unless they're looking into 100%. Slayton's on an expiring contract, but how the hell are they thinking about that? I didn't even know that. So, not saying that I know everything, but I don't know. All right, well, it's time to fight. We've been way too cordial. Wait, have you done your last one? Yeah, that was one.
Last one.
Okay. So I really wanted to sneak this in here, but honestly, I didn't want to tell anyone any bad news. But I did just want to talk about it because why not Etienne? I'm not saying he's a league winner, but I'm just saying if you could, Etienne's free. I watched someone drop him in a league. and it's a small bench league, so I understand that that's not going to be in every league. But Etienne, coming off of being running back one pretty much all year last year, having a pretty decent performance throughout the year, and then getting a hamstring injury, catches passes. Tank Bisbee hasn't really been doing anything. It's obviously not happening this week against Detroit, although it could. And you got a bye week. So I mean, he might even just be dropped in some more leagues. And then you got some juicy plus matchups later. Like you got Jets. Yeah, they used to be good against the run. They're fine. Vegas in the championship. I don't know if you're rolling Etienne out there, but you never know about injuries. I always like to stack my bench as much as I can. Tennessee, Houston. I mean, they're not the best matchups, but Etienne catches passes, and this is a team. The only thing that kills me here is and this is why I didn't put it in there, is because Trevor Lawrence isn't even playing anymore, so this team seems a little bit washed. But Etienne's fully healthy.
Yeah.
Like,
I would say I know that we're not talking league winner wise, but I would say if you could get him for pennies on the dollar, then sure. But I wouldn't give up an actual asset to go get him like that. I
no,
think
no, no.
I think whoever has him for the most part, at least in dynasty wise, wants off of him. And I think even in redraft, if you have Etienne, you would love to
Oh,
trade in for
absolutely, 100% go buy him in Dynasty. If you can do that, please do. But I'm talking about just
like
redraft right now.
I think if you offer like Rashad White for Travis Etienne, I think you could get that done. I really do.
Kareem Hunt, who's got Pacheco coming back, could be pretty
I would
interesting.
wait until Pacheco comes back. Well, I guess you can't wait because you got to make that move now. I don't think anybody's going to
Yeah.
give up Hunt
I'm
or
not saying
Etienne.
I'm not saying I'm not saying do that, but I'm saying like someone who's about to expire, someone at the bottom of your bench that you've been sitting on like for a while, and it's just like Dowdle. Dowdle's a great person to trade for Etienne. Like, yeah, he
Yeah.
could go off, but the Cowboys haven't. Not a single person's gone off on that team except for CD 1 week against you. Anyway,
Anyways,
I just
it's just not that I want to fight you about it. I just think like the days are gone. Like we're
it's
past
not
the
over
Etienne
though.
era.
He had a. It's
It
not.
is
It's been
it
one.
is
See, this is
over.
what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. It's been
As soon
1
as
year.
Peterson gets fired and they have to start figuring out what they're going to do with this football team, I don't believe Travis Etienne, whose contract's going to be up after next season, is going to be a part of those plans going forward. He is not that good enough to keep. It's not like we have Saquon. Like this guy can go live on another person's team.
I feel like it's not over for Etienne. They had a
Plus
really tough
this,
schedule this year.
plus like this is the toughest season to like off season to be a free agent running back because this running back class that's coming in from college is literally like the one we were promised.
Well, he's
It's
not expiring until
maybe
next year, right? He has one more
I
year.
know, but like they're gonna, he's gonna get negotiations this year because they're not
Oh,
gonna,
that's fair.
he's not gonna sit on it. But he's gonna have to because this, like, literally, this draft class, like, is gonna feed families for years to come in dynasty because there's so many running backs. But we can get to that later. But
I just feel like it's
yeah,
really
it's just
easy
a
to be
tough
like
time.
Bigsby's so great. He had 3 games that he's been good in, and he's had 3 other games that he has had a full workload and hasn't really done anything. So I understand Bigsby. He looks explosive. He really gets out there. Etienne was never that guy. Etienne was the grinder. So like honestly, I love the
True.
combination of the two of them. Their team's just bad, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the problem. It's not Etienne that's the problem. The team's bad.
Can I? Okay, since you pitched out like a half-ass trade one, I'm going to pitch out my half-ass trade one because there is a very good point about not trading for him, and that's Rashad Bateman from Baltimore.
Dude,
Um, Currently wide receiver 25 on the year, 27 in some leagues.
Mhm.
Um, the problem is obvious. Deontay Johnson hasn't gotten a full workload yet. So you can't really take what Rashad Bateman has done in this offense and think that that is going to be something that's going to win you for weeks to come. I'm just saying it's not a bad thought, though, to maybe go offer something for him because I feel like I'd rather have him on my bench just in case for the playoff run than for me to have wished I had done that. You know what I'm saying?
So okay, my only problem with Bateman is he's been so hit and miss, even without Deontay Johnson there, right? Like he hit his touchdown last week, he hit 100 yards another a few weeks back, and then like it's wishy washy already. But like if this team hits injuries, like if Zay Flowers unfortunately would go down, he's immediately thrust into a role where he's getting 3 more targets a game, right? Like it's a 7, 8 every week. So I mean, I like you said, I'd love to have him on my bench. I think he's a great modifier for a trade. Like
I think it's a
I'm
guy you want to add to a trade to get it done. Like if somebody was like, we're making some big deals, and then I needed another player to throw in, I think Rashad Bateman would be a guy I would love to have thrown in on the other side to get me over the top because at worst, I feel like he is, if you have like a double flex league or something, like he is a guy I don't mind putting in that spot. I don't trust it completely. I'm not saying I do, but this offense is very high volume, and the Tylan Wallace touchdown isn't always going to happen. And yeah, you're right. If one injury goes down, like Isaiah Likely gets hurt, well, he did, but like if somebody else gets hurt, I think there's some more targets on this team. And I do kind of like Bateman right now. I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, I like if someone. I'm trying to think of something. I haven't really like pulled anything up, but like if someone offered you like Montgomery for Walker, and you're like, I like this. I'd rather have Montgomery or I'd rather have Walker,
All right,
but
all right.
I'm
You want
not
to
there.
play? Do you want to play a name game real quick? I'll throw you some options. These are the guys that
Okay.
are ranked somewhat around him right now, and we'll see what you think. So Rashad Bateman or Quentin Johnston.
Either Bateman clearly.
Okay, well these are guys around this area.
See, I'm sitting here thinking like more as a modifier, right? Like I don't think anyone's even worried about trading Bateman, right? Like I was thinking like you're trading running backs, right? Like you're swapping some running backs, but you just didn't like it that much. Like let me okay, let's go extreme for a second. Christian McCaffrey for Bijan, and you have Christian McCaffrey, and you're like he's worth more than Bijan, throw in Bateman. I'm okay with either running back, but like I want something else. Like I have the best one, right? Like I know Bijan's
He
great.
would be a sweetener. I feel like that one might be a little bit too close because
It's a little too close. I went a little too high.
Do straight up. How about like Jonathan Taylor or Christian McCaffrey?
Okay, there you go. That's a great.
You
sweetener,
you add Bateman to the Taylor side and get CMC. I think that gets done 100%.
Yeah, and then like Swift for Najee, right? Like I'm like, cool, I like Najee. He's been doing good. He's been getting 20 carries, but he's still kind of boring, right? Like throwing a Bateman on that side. Like, yeah, Swift's been putting up 20s, but I'm getting the consistent guy and I got this hopeful, right?
Yeah, not a bad thought there.
Yeah, because I don't feel like you're trading Bateman one for one, right? Like nobody ever. This is the problem with fantasy football, and as much as I love for fantasy football, is every time I'm out there trading, I'm like, hey man, I want to get Rashad Bateman off your team. I'm going to send you Elijah Moore, and they're like, yeah, okay. What do you want for Christian McCaffrey? And I'm like, what? We're trading fifth string wide receivers right now, and then you jump immediately to the number one guy on my team, which happens every time. I've been in too many leagues where this happens. It's not like Trump there for a second. I've been in so many leagues. But this happens to me all the time. I was just in a league the other day. But no, I just think nobody's really trading. Like if they have Bateman and you're just trading them another Bateman, they're like, why? I mean, why? So I think the sweetener deal. I don't dislike that. All right, one guy that Joe wanted to talk about, and I actually do agree with him on this. There was a couple other ones I don't even want to get into that he had mentioned. DJ Moore is a buy.
We need to talk about the Chicago wide receivers.
I want to let's just talk about DJ Moore, who's actually Joe's, and I'll pitch this point. This can't keep happening. Like the 4 games in a row under 10, DJ Moore is not meant for this, and these teams that they're playing weren't even great. Like we got Washington, who didn't even have Lattimore yet, which I think Lattimore's a little bit not done, but getting close to done. Arizona's defense, New England is fine, sure, whatever. Jacksonville, this is just a crazy bust. So the reason I would say to trade for DJ Moore is they are making moves. They just fired their offensive coordinator. Shane Waldron might be on the chopping block next, or
Waldron got fired.
He is the offensive coordinator. Sorry, who's the coach?
Eberflus.
Eberflus. Okay, sorry, my bad. I did mix those up. Anyway, but there's got to be a spark here, right? And the first thing the offensive coordinator who walks in is, why did DJ Moore only get 6 targets last game and 4 2 games before that? We need to get him 10 targets immediately. So DJ Moore, whoever has DJ Moore, fortunately it's not me. In this league, it's Joe, as you see Los Osos above his name, is probably, unless they're a Bears fan, done with DJ Moore. So I think that is actually a really accurate trade. But I think, honestly, trading for any of these Bears receivers, Keenan Allen, probably the least of the 3, but I would not be upset about going and getting Adunze right now either, because maybe it is Adunze who's actually been getting pretty solid targets, and maybe DJ Moore just doesn't click as much with Caleb as we thought he would. But obviously, it's going to be something in the future. Rome's probably a lot cheaper than you're going to get with DJ Moore just because of namesake value and where they drafted him. But no, these Bears receivers are free right now, and this team can't be this bad. They, at least, even if they're not fighting for a playoff spot, they are fighting to show that they have something here. So,
on this trade value chart that I've been kind of referencing this entire night, he is valued the exact same as Ricky Pearsall.
Dude, honestly though, I
On the
love
trade
Ricky
value
Pearsall.
chart.
I actually thought about putting
Well, I
him
do
in my
too.
list.
And some of the names that they have listed above him, at first I thought they were egregious, but the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, I kind of like it. Like Cedric Tillman, kind of like Cedric Tillman right now. Tank Dell, Ladd McConkey, Cortland Sutton. I'm like, kind of like those guys more than DJ Moore at this exact moment. But maybe,
I'd sell Tank Dell right now.
Yeah, over DJ Moore, of course.
I'd sell Tank Dell for less.
It's I don't know. It's kind of crazy the spot we're in right now because as our Bears prognosticator said, I mean DJ Moore was a top 6 wide receiver in Dynasty right now, and that's a heck of a fall from grace all of a sudden.
And honestly, though, he really was. He called him being a top 6 receiver, and then he ended up in the top 6 over last year. And I didn't believe him last year. And this year, it is not working out. But I feel like something's got to change. And that's the kind of guy I'm trying to trade for on my team, an underperforming superstar, right? Like, and yes, you probably have to give up more than some of these guys. Like you're not trading Pearsall for him right now, straight up. But honestly, though, let's talk about Pearsall because I thought about bringing him in there. The only reason I didn't is because of how inconsistent San Francisco receivers have been this year, right? You got Debo on and off, on and off, on and off. You got Jawan Jennings, who had his burst but hasn't done it since. I mean, I think he got like 10 points last week, which was fine.
I think people believe more in Jawan Jennings than they do him on Pearsall.
Yeah, I think Pearsall is actually really cheap right now, and he's been having a low-key great start to his season. So I don't know. Wouldn't mind throwing him in a trade. I know that it's only 4 catches for 40 yards, 4 catches for 70 yards, but he's looking good, man. And it looks like Purdy's got his eye on him. So
the thing is, when you're making a championship run, these are the kind of guys you want on your bench, like to be between. You don't want to be going like I know like Marquez Valdez-Scantling was like a really popular one this week, and I kind of like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, but I would much rather have like Ricky Pearsall as like the option for me than like thinking, is he going to be the Rashid Shaheed on this team, or am I going to get completely screwed here on my championship run? I'd much rather have Pearsall where I think the floor is a little bit more stable than some guy like that, for example.
I think, and the problem with Valdez-Scantling is he did all that on 3 catches, right? Like, I mean, people that are starting MVS, but all power to you this week. But like, I would never. Like, I don't think I'd ever be as
literally Shaheed. People are thinking that okay, so he needed to find Rashid Shaheed on the team. MVS is there, so this is just what it's going to be now. But it doesn't work like that in fantasy. It never does. It's never as easy as you think.
It's never a 1-for-1.
Exactly. It's not like one week you have a 58-point performance, then the next week you're also going to have a 58-point performance. All the Jamar Chase people out there, that there's people that were legitimately had made trades that were crying about making those trades because of 1 week out of Jamar Chase. And I'm like, well, look at the deal you have. Your deal is much better than 1 week of Jamar Chase winning you a matchup. Like, we got to see the forest through the trees here a little bit.
This goes back to the whole recency bias thing, right? Like, everyone saw the Jamar Chase thing, which was amazing. Like, I honestly lost a week because of it. Not that my team did anything anyway, but our own Joe Wiggins beat me because of Jamar Chase, and I had Burrow. Like, it was even worse because I was like, can you just throw another touchdown to somebody else? Nope, just Chase. Cool, got it. But like, there was 3 people that we could have taken. It was Chase, Jefferson, and Saquon. And I got Saquon in the 3rd pick. And I'm not sitting here like, man, I really wish Chase would have got to me. I've had Saquon all year. I've gotten my 20s. I've gotten my 30s. Yes, I haven't got a 55. But how many more times is Jamar going to get a 55? Probably 0.
Probably not, because most people are going to probably cover him. But Baltimore just wasn't in the vibes, and they still won that game, so it's not like they care. It's not like
they should not have, though, which is the worst part for the Cincy. I don't know what Cincy has to do other than throw Jamar Chase the ball 17 times. Like, to win a game, like, this team should be doing so much better. They've lost a lot of close ones. They've been shut down a couple times too. So
the problem is when you have a team built around a quarterback and a wide receiver, the rest of the team has to be good, and they're not. Because if those two guys weren't there, this would be like a bottom 3 team in the league easily. But those two
I
guys
agree.
are there, so they're preventing
Although
that from happening.
the problem with this is their defense was actually supposed to be better than this, right? Like their offense, yes, obviously if Jamar Chase or Joe Burrow went down, their offense is toast, right? We understand that. The defense, on the other hand, was supposed to be better than this. You got Sam Hubbard and what's the other guy? Hendrickson, who've been staples for years and years and years. You have Jordan Battle, he drafted 2 years ago and still hasn't done anything. I guess it was last year. And just like barely sees the field. I mean, he's starting to see a little bit more and more.
If you ask Bengals fans, they say it's because there's been a lot of injuries. BJ Hill, who's used as a defensive tackle, has been hurt. Dax Hill, who a lot of people, including myself, liked in the secondary, has been hurt. And that they just blame these injuries because, like, you know, they're key pieces of the team. But
they're getting burnt on the ground too, and their linebackers aren't like, you know, a joke by any means. Logan Wilson and what's his face? Jermaine Pratt's a little older, but they're still like out there. Like they should be better than this. This whole defense is just maybe it's a defensive coordinator issue. I don't know what it is, but it's ridiculous. And I feel bad for Bengals fans because honestly, they should be at least, you know, 6-7 wins.
For sure.
Maybe 6 wins.
Yeah, you're probably right. Okay. Well, that is all we have this week for the league winners. Hoping everybody out there is going to go make at least one trade to try to win their league. Come on. Like, every league should be making a couple of trades. I know that we live in leagues right now, Josh and I especially, that nobody makes a trade because nobody trusts me or him anymore. But hopefully in your fun, friendly leagues, you guys still want to make each other's teams better and you have years of trust and stuff that we don't have as much anymore from our friends and family.
Yeah, this whole analyst business, everyone's like, well, you have a podcast, so you know what's going on. I was like, you can too. Exactly. Just look up the news. Like,
you know something.
You know something. And I was like, dude, I'm trying to trade for like Ricky Pearsall right now. He's had 3 games. I don't know anything. I hope he's good, right? Like, I'm trading you JSN. It's like, no, JSN's bad. And I'm like, all right, whatever, man.
100%. People just do not want to make trades with us because they think we know something, which we don't. We just know probably a little bit more than the average person.
That's what fantasy football is, man. You go on a hunch. That's what I always tell people. Just go with the people you like, man. You can go off the rankings all you want. And honestly, I've seen so many auto-drafted teams end up like winning leagues or at least being right there at the end of it all. And that's all because someone's like, I don't like Tank Dell, I'm not taking him. And someone gets Tank Dell in like the 12th round for like no reason because he's just sitting there. Because they're like, Nico, Diggs and Nico are the only 2. And then Tank Dell, obviously, you know, who's had some pretty good games here. Someone got him for free, basically. But no, I love this game. I'm sad we're already at week 11. Sometimes it pisses me off. I had a chance, by the way, Billy, and I didn't get a chance to tell you this. Week 9, when we played each other in 2 different leagues, I had a chance to go 6 for 6 in all my money leagues, and you took one of them, Integrity. And I mean, I've been losing in that league all year. So
be like that sometime, for sure. All right. Well, next week, I'm not 100% sure what we're gonna do just yet. I know me and Joe really want to do a mock draft, so probably
already.
Josh, yeah, we want to do a super early one. So we may rope Josh into doing that, or we might do some dynasty topics. I don't know. We'll have to talk amongst ourselves. But for all you out there, thank you so much for tuning in. We're going to be here all off season, into draft season. It's one of our favorite times of year. So Josh, get us out of here.
Thanks for listening, guys. And Joe will be back next week to give you better intros and outros.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.